When I first saw the ad for the room, it felt like the kind of too good to be true offer people warned you about, one of those grainy, underpriced Craigslist listings with one poorly lit photo and a caption that read more like a dare than an invitation. Old house, quiet tenants. Private room. No pets, no questions. The photo showed a crooked staircase bathed in yellow lamplight, and I don't even know why I clicked. Maybe because I was desperate. Maybe because I couldn't afford my current apartment anymore. Or maybe, and I hate admitting this, maybe because some part of me wanted something to happen. I'd been going numb for months after the breakup, and when you're that emotionally dead, sometimes you crave anything that makes you feel alive again, even fear. So, without thinking much about it, I packed up my things and showed up at that creaking Victorian house with chipped paint and a doorbell that didn't work, never imagining that by the time I left, if I ever really did, I wouldn't be the same person anymore. The landlord was a soft-spoken man with cloudy eyes and a limp, the kind of presence that made you instinctively lower your voice around him. He didn't say much during our walk through, only the essentials, where the kitchen was, which bathroom to use, the laundry schedule. The air inside the house felt thick, as if it hadn't moved in years, and the wallpaper peeled in silent strips like it was trying to whisper something. I noticed there were 6 doors on the second-floor hallway, 5 evenly spaced and one at the very end, covered in layers of paint so thick it looked like someone had tried to bury it alive. When I asked what was behind it, the landlord's face changed. Not in an obvious way, no sudden scowl or stern warning, just a quiet stillness, like everything inside him stopped moving for a second. Then he said, as calmly as if commenting on the weather, "We don't open that door. No one does." Before I could ask anything else, he handed me my key and turned away. That night, as I lay down in my too-quiet room, I told myself to forget it. I told myself that locked doors in old houses aren't unusual, that sometimes boundaries are just boundaries. But at exactly 3:17 a.m., I woke up to a sound I couldn't explain, a soft knocking, slow and deliberate, coming from the very end of the hallway. At first I thought it was my imagination, the kind of sleep paralysis haze you get when you're half dreaming. But the knock came again, 3 times. Not rushed, not timid. Just, patient. I sat up in bed, heart thudding in that erratic, animal rhythm you only get when your instincts feel something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. I crept out of bed, careful not to make the floorboards groan, and peeked out into the hallway. The others' doors were closed. No footsteps. No whispers. Just silence, and that door, still shut, sitting at the end of the hallway like a waiting mouth. I stared at it for what felt like hours, waiting for it to creak open, waiting for something, anything, to happen. And just before I turned away, I noticed something wedged between the baseboard and the wallpaper right beside it, a photograph, dusty and curled with age. I pulled it free. The image was faded, almost too faded to see, but when I wiped it with my sleeve, my stomach dropped into ice. It was a photo of this very hallway, same carpet, same doors, but someone was standing in front of that locked door, one hand on the knob, and I swear to you, the person in the picture was me. The morning after I found the photo, I was running on 3 hours of sleep and an itch in my brain that wouldn't stop scratching. I couldn't focus. I couldn't shake the image of that photograph, the hallway, the angle, the body, the face, and no matter how many times I stared at it, no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, it was still me in that picture. My shirt. My posture. My hair. But I'd never stood in front of that door before, never even touched it. The other tenants, 4 in total, were scattered across the house like mismatched puzzle pieces. They rarely spoke unless you cornered them, and when they did, they always sounded half awake, like they'd just woken from a deep sleep they never really wanted to come out of. I tried asking one of them, a pale, nervous girl named Kelsey who lived 2 doors down, if she'd ever noticed anything strange about the place. She flinched before I even finished the sentence, glanced quickly toward the end of the hallway, and whispered, "Don't mention it out loud." Her voice cracked, as if the very air around us might be listening, and she added, "We all hear it. But you can't answer." You understand? If it knocks, you don't answer. That was the first time I'd heard the term house rules. Not from the landlord, who still hadn't said more than 20 words to me since move-in day, but from the tenants themselves, unwritten guidelines that everyone seemed to follow without question. I started to notice how none of them left their rooms after midnight, how they avoided eye contact in the hallway after dark, and how every single one of them had reinforced their bedroom doors from the inside with makeshift locks, chairs, chains, even planks of wood nailed crudely across the frames. One guy, an older man named Dan, never came out of his room at all during the night, and when I finally caught him leaving for work in the morning, he shoved a crumpled scrap of paper into my hand before walking away without a word. I unfolded it right there on the stairs. It was a list, hastily written in all caps. Don't go to the end of the hall. Don't ask about the door. Don't say your name out loud after dark. Don't open the windows at night. Don't listen if it uses your voice. That last one made my spine go cold. At the bottom of the page, scratched into the paper so hard it nearly tore through, were the words, "IT remembers." That night, I tried to follow the rules. I locked my door, shoved a chair under the knob, and left every light in my room on even though the buzzing from the overhead fixture made it almost impossible to sleep. But sometime after 3 a.m., I woke up, not because of a sound, but because of silence. The kind of suffocating, oppressive silence that made your ears ring like they were begging for anything, even a scream, to break it. I reached for my phone, but it was dead, though I'd charged it before bed. I stood up, heart hammering, and moved toward the door to listen. And then I heard it, soft at first, like someone whispering into a pillow, but growing louder, more urgent. It was my voice, whispering my own name through the door like a taunt. Hey, hey, open up. It's me. I need your help. The words were perfect, same tone, same cadence, but underneath them was something else. A subtle distortion, like a second voice riding underneath mine, mimicking me like a shadow trying too hard to be real. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there and listened, frozen, until the whispering stopped, and a slow, deliberate scratching began, not on my door, but at the far end of the hallway, where the locked door waited like a mouth that had learned to speak. I didn't sleep for more than an hour the night after I heard my own voice whispering through the door, and the sleep I did manage to get was polluted with fragmented images, a hallway that looped endlessly, a blackened door breathing like a lung, and a figure on the other side that wore my face but didn't blink. When morning finally came, it wasn't light that woke me, but the sensation of being watched. Not the subtle kind you shrug off in public, but a deep, pressing awareness, like eyes behind glass, studying, waiting, memorizing every breath I took. I threw on my jacket and left my room without brushing my teeth or checking my phone. I didn't care. I just needed to be somewhere else, somewhere outside that house. But as I passed the end of the hallway, I paused. Something was different. The light bulb near the locked door was flickering, casting sickly yellow flashes against the peeling wallpaper, and that's when I saw it, carved into the wall, nearly invisible in the shifting light. A name. Then another. And another. Dozens of them, scratched into the plaster in uneven, frantic strokes, some barely legible, some almost carved deep enough to reach the wood beneath. My hand trembled as I reached out to trace one of them, and stopped cold when I saw mine. Not just my first name. My full name. Carved as though someone had been practicing it for years, over and over, until the groove in the wall was smoother than the rest. I backed away so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet, and in my panic, I didn't notice Kelsey behind me until she grabbed my arm with fingers like ice. Her eyes were wide and unfocused, and she didn't blink when she spoke. "It writes the names of the ones it likes," she said, her voice flat, almost rehearsed, as if she'd said it many times before, maybe even in a dream. "The ones it remembers. The ones who talk back." I tried to ask her what that meant, but she just shook her head and turned away, disappearing into her room and locking the door behind her like she was sealing herself in a tomb. I stood there alone, heart hammering, throat dry, facing that door at the end of the hall as if it had ears. I don't know how long I stood there. It might have been minutes. It might have been longer. But at some point, I noticed something else. The air around the door was colder than the rest of the house, unnaturally so, like a walk-in freezer left open too long. And in that silence, I swear I heard something behind it, breathing, slow and steady, like a hibernating animal that had just started to stir. I went back into my room and tried to write everything down, every sound, every face, every word whispered through the hallway like smoke from a candle that refuses to go out. But when I opened my notebook, I found something I hadn't written. A line, in my handwriting, but jagged, rushed, almost violent. "Let me in. I'm so close now." I flipped back through the pages, searching for some kind of explanation, but the ink had bled, as if water had been spilled across them, or tears, maybe, though I don't remember crying. I started to feel like something was wrong with my mind, like pieces of memory were being replaced while I slept. That night, I didn't even bother trying to sleep. I sat in bed with my phone flashlight pointed at the door, hands clenched into fists, listening to the house groan around me. At 3:14 a.m., I heard a floorboard creak outside. Then another. Then a whisper so soft I almost didn't believe it was real, "You're almost ready." It wasn't my voice this time. But it wasn't someone else's either. It sounded like both, like a chorus of me, echoing from the other side of the wall. I don't know what finally pushed me over the edge, the carved names, the whispers in my own voice, or the sensation that reality itself was starting to loosen around the edges like old wallpaper peeling off in layers, but the night after the whisper said, "You're almost ready," I went out and bought a small motion-triggered camera. Nothing fancy, just one of those discreet black cubes with night vision and sound detection, the kind paranoid people use to check if their dogs bark while they're away. I placed it in the hallway outside my door, angled so it had a clear view of the entire corridor, especially the locked door at the end. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to hear more warnings or hushed voices telling me to stop. I needed proof, of what, I wasn't even sure anymore. Ghosts? Someone sneaking around? Myself? Whatever it was, I had to know. That night, I stayed awake until 2:30 a.m., then crawled into bed and pretended to sleep. I kept the lights off for the first time since moving in. I wanted it to come. I wanted it to show itself. And around 3:19 a.m., I heard the floor creak. One step. Then two. Then silence. But I didn't move. I just listened, heart hammering so loudly I thought it might give me away. The next morning, I rushed to check the footage with a mix of excitement and dread bubbling in my stomach like acid. At first, the feed showed exactly what I expected, an empty hallway, dimly lit, still as death. But at the 3:17 mark, the camera detected motion. I watched with wide eyes as the image flickered, static crawling across the screen like insects. And then, slowly, a figure stepped into view. It was me. Standing just outside my own door, staring directly into the lens. Same hoodie I'd worn to bed. Same expression I see every morning in the mirror. But the figure didn't move. It didn't knock. It didn't speak. It just stood there for nearly 3 minutes, unmoving, eyes locked on the camera like it could see through the screen, see me watching. Then, and I swear this happened, the figure raised one hand and waved. Not a slow, eerie wave like you'd expect in a horror movie. It was casual. Playful. Like we shared a secret. Like I was being welcomed back. I paused the video, breath caught in my throat, and rewound it to make sure I hadn't imagined it. But when I went frame by frame, the face changed, just for a second. It flickered between mine and something else. Something with no eyes. Just sockets. Deep and empty and full of something I couldn't name. I didn't leave my room the rest of the day. I couldn't. I locked the door, shoved my dresser in front of it, and turned every light on until my room buzzed with electricity like a hive. But by nightfall, something inside me, some desperate, morbid instinct, told me to check again. To see if I'd missed anything. So I played the footage one more time. Only this time, when I hit play, the video didn't start at the beginning. It skipped straight to 3:17. Straight to the hallway. But there was no camera angle. No hallway. Just darkness. Then a voice. My voice. But I wasn't speaking. You're watching me now, it said, but I've been watching you longer. The screen flashed, 1 second, maybe less, but it was enough to freeze my blood. It showed me lying in bed, asleep, from a top-down angle like a ceiling camera, but I never placed a camera in my room. The timestamp read 3:33 a.m. And in the bottom corner, barely visible, was a hand reaching down from the ceiling toward my face. By the fifth night, my sense of time had started to unravel in the same quiet, disorienting way a person might lose their hearing, not all at once, but in layers, until the silence becomes louder than the sound ever was. I stopped checking clocks because they never seemed to agree, and mirrors became a gamble I wasn't willing to take anymore. Sometimes I saw myself blink when I knew I hadn't, sometimes the reflection would smile even though my mouth stayed closed. I began walking across my bedroom floor only in socks because the creaking had started to change, no longer random or natural, but rhythmic, almost conversational, as if someone beneath the floorboards was matching my steps with their own. It wasn't just wood shifting anymore. It was speech. One night, unable to sleep and driven half-mad by the growing pressure behind my eyes, I pried up a loose board under my bed with a fork and a pair of pliers, expecting maybe dust, maybe old pipes. What I found instead was a small cloth bundle, yellowed, wrapped tightly in twine, and soaked through with something dark and sticky that smelled like iron and rot. My breath hitched as I unwrapped it and found, inside, an old leather-bound journal with brittle, water-stained pages. The name scrawled on the inside cover made my stomach twist, Leland Crane, 1986. I didn't recognize the name, but I remembered something, a carved L. Crane on the wall by the door, just above my own. I read the journal by flashlight, flipping slowly through each warped page, trying to keep my trembling fingers from tearing them. Most entries were jumbled nonsense, words that seemed rearranged like puzzle pieces in the wrong box, fragments of prayers next to drawings of hands with too many fingers. But around the halfway mark, the writing grew lucid. Focused. The door speaks in your voice so you'll trust it, one entry read. It makes you dream of things you've never done, until you believe you did them. That's how it gets in. Another page warned against sleeping too close to the floor. It rises like cold through the wood. It tastes you through your skin. The final entry before the ink turned to wild, illegible scrawl was just one line, and I can still hear it echoing in my skull like a memory from a life I'm not sure I lived. You don't let it out, it lets you in. I dropped the journal and staggered back, nearly falling, because just then I heard it, from beneath the floorboards. A whisper. Too low to make out. But there were two voices, one sounded like a man crying, the other, laughing in perfect sync. Desperate for answers, I called the police. I didn't know what to say at first. I couldn't exactly report a door that breathes or a mirror that lies, so I told them someone had been sneaking into the house, possibly hiding in the walls or attic. To my surprise, they showed up within the hour. 2 officers. Calm. Professional. But when I pointed toward the end of the hallway and said, "It's that door, something's behind it," they exchanged a glance that chilled me to my core. Without even walking down the hall, one of them said, "There's no door there." I laughed, or maybe gasped, thinking it was a joke, until I realized they were serious. I insisted. Begged them to check. They agreed, reluctantly, and walked to the end of the hallway, but when I followed behind them, I felt my stomach drop into a void I didn't know existed. The wall was blank. Seamless. The door was gone. Just smooth paint and old plaster. They gave me a look I'll never forget, pity, tinted with quiet dread, and told me to get some rest before leaving. But as I stood alone in that hallway, staring at the space where the door should have been, I noticed something else. The air was still cold. The floor still creaked beneath me. And as I leaned closer, pressing my ear to the wall, I heard a soft knock from the other side, followed by my voice saying, "It's okay. They can't see me. But you can." After the wall swallowed the door, or worse, made it so I was the only one who could still see it, I started sleeping with the lights on again, though it didn't help. I told myself I'd stay awake, told myself I wouldn't fall into the rhythm of the house and its whispering lullabies, but something inside that place changes you. It doesn't just wait in the shadows, it seeps into your skin, softens the walls between waking and sleeping until dreams feel like memories and memories feel like things you imagined. I don't remember the exact night it began, only that I blinked and found myself standing in front of the door again, the real one this time, not the blank wall. In the dream, it was open just a crack, wide enough to let light spill through, but the light wasn't warm. It was gray and thick like fog, and inside that sliver of space, I saw movement, slow, shifting shapes dragging themselves across the floor, pale arms too long to be human, heads twitching like static. I couldn't move. I just stood there, trembling, while something behind me whispered, "You've already opened it once. This time, stay." When I woke up, my bedroom door was open. I never leave it open. And when I checked my phone, I found a photo in my camera roll, grainy and dark, of me sleeping, taken from just inches above my bed. The dreams got worse. They weren't dreams anymore. I'd be in my room one moment, and the next I'd find myself back in that rotting hallway, not the real one, but a twisted version soaked in water, the walls breathing like lungs, the carpet sticky with something black and wet. The door would always be there, waiting at the end like a trap I'd set for myself. In one dream, I reached out to touch it and my fingers passed straight through, like mist, only to come out the other side covered in teeth marks. In another, I walked inside. The room was an exact replica of mine, down to the smallest detail, but everything was reversed, mirror image perfect. And sitting on the bed was, me. But older. Grayer. Broken. He looked up, eyes dull and sunken, and whispered, "We're all in here now. We just don't know it yet." Then he smiled, and his smile stretched too wide, splitting the corners of his mouth like torn cloth. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, nails bitten down to the quick without remembering ever touching my face. My reflection in the mirror that morning was slower to move than I was, just by half a second, but enough for me to see it. And when I blinked, it didn't. I tried to tell the others, I needed someone, anyone, to confirm I wasn't slipping away entirely, but Kelsey's room was empty. Not just vacant, but stripped bare. Mattress gone. Drawers open. Not a single sign she'd ever lived there. I knocked on Dan's door, and when it creaked open, the walls inside were covered floor to ceiling with pages. Journal entries, newspapers, photographs of people standing in front of the door, dozens of them, some black and white, some faded color, all with the faces scratched out violently in red pen. A note was taped to the center wall, written in bold marker, "They're not dreams. They're mapping your mind." And beneath it, in smaller handwriting that looked shaky and desperate, "Don't trust what looks like you." That night, I nailed my window shut. I turned the mirror to face the wall. I barricaded the door. But at 3:22 a.m., I heard scratching again, only this time it came from inside my closet. And a voice, my own, whispered from the darkness, "I dreamed you would let me in." When I heard the front door slam that morning, I was still shaking from the night before, the dream, the scratching in the closet, the voice that sounded like mine but wasn't mine. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't spoken a single word out loud since reading Dan's message, "Don't trust what looks like you." But the slam of the door wasn't just loud, it was final. It carried a weight that sent a tremor through the floorboards. I crept to the top of the stairs and peeked down, and that's when I saw him. The new tenant. Roommate number 6. The landlord stood beside him, silent as always, holding a key out like it was a weapon, while the man, tall, thin, dressed in a navy hoodie and jeans, just nodded. But it wasn't his clothes or posture that made my stomach churn. It was his face. From a distance, it looked wrong. Not disfigured, worse than that. Familiar. Almost identical to someone I'd seen 1,000 times. Me. Not an exact match, but close enough that my mind recoiled, trying to explain it away as coincidence. But then he looked up the stairs. Our eyes met. And he smiled. It was the same crooked smile I'd seen on my own reflection 2 nights ago, the one that moved half a second too late. I didn't speak to him for the first 2 days. I watched him from my doorway when I could, listened to his footsteps, noted how they were always in sync with mine, how he would hum the same tune I'd only ever thought of silently in my head. He never knocked. Never asked for help. Never made small talk. But I found signs that he'd been in my room. My toothbrush was damp one morning, though I hadn't used it. My socks were rearranged in the drawer. The picture I kept on my nightstand, a photo of me and my sister from years ago, was flipped upside down. I confronted the landlord, demanded to know who the new tenant was, asked for his name, ID, anything. The landlord just blinked slowly and said, he signed the lease. That's all that matters. When I pressed further, he added, you've always lived here. You all have. That night, I left a small scrap of paper on the floor outside the new guy's room, a test, something simple. Just a question, do you know me? The next morning, the note was back under my door. Different handwriting. A single word, yes. It gets worse. It always does in this place. I tried filming him with my phone, thinking maybe if I could capture him on video, I'd have proof. But every time I pressed record, the screen glitched. Not static, not even a blackout. Just my own face, staring back, no matter where I aimed the camera. I tried catching him in the hallway, pretending to casually bump into him, but he was always one step ahead, turning corners just before I could reach him, entering rooms just as I looked away. Last night, I waited. I sat on my bed with the lights off and the camera hidden, watching the hallway through the crack beneath my door. At 3:11 a.m., I saw shadows move. And then, something slid a piece of paper under my door. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was another photo. Blurry. Low light. Me, standing in front of the door at the end of the hallway. Only this time, the door was open. And inside, in the darkness behind me, was a second version of myself, reaching out with one hand, pale, bloodless, and smiling far too wide. Written in ink across the bottom of the photo, in block letters, was a message I can't stop hearing no matter how hard I try to forget it. One of you has to stay. I don't know when the hallway changed. I only know that it did. Subtly, at first, the wallpaper darkened a shade, the floorboards creaked out of sequence, the light bulb outside my door began to hum louder than usual, a pitch so sharp it made my molars ache. But then the angles of the house began to shift, doors seemed farther away than they were the day before, stairs took longer to climb, windows reflected rooms I hadn't entered yet. I'd leave my bedroom to go to the kitchen and find myself back at the top of the stairs, standing in front of the blank wall where the door used to be, where it still was, in my dreams, in my head, and somewhere deeper I couldn't name. The worst part was that I didn't feel fear anymore. Not the raw, skin-crawling panic I'd once known. What replaced it was something worse, familiarity. The sensation that I'd walked these loops before, stared at these peeling walls 1,000 times in lives I'd already lived and forgotten. I started to write down the date every morning when I woke up, just to track time, but when I looked back at the notebook yesterday, every page said the same thing, in my handwriting, no less. You never left. I confronted the landlord again, not because I thought he'd help, but because I had to try. I found him in the basement, crouched beside the furnace, whispering something to the wall with his back turned to me. When I spoke, he didn't flinch, didn't react like someone caught. He just stood up, turned around, and stared through me like he was looking at something that wasn't there. I demanded answers, screamed at him, shoved him against the wall, and finally, he spoke. "This house remembers," he said, his voice dry as dust. "It only opens for those who forget who they are." I asked him how long I'd been here, where the others had gone, why the new tenant looked like me. He just smiled, slow and wide, and said something I'll never forget: "You were the new tenant once. You just don't remember." Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled photo, and handed it to me. It was old. Sepia-toned. 5 tenants, standing outside the house, their faces obscured by glare, except one. Me. Younger. Blank-eyed. Smiling. Holding a ring of keys in my hand. The landlord placed a hand on my shoulder, leaned close, and whispered, "You brought the door here. We just keep it locked." That night, I packed my bag. I didn't care where I went, a motel, the street, anywhere but that house. I ran down the stairs, heart racing, grip tight around the doorknob, but when I opened the front door, I didn't find the porch. I found the second-floor hallway. The same hallway. My hallway. My room at the far end. The blank wall where the door used to be. Only now, the wall wasn't blank. The door was back. Fully visible. Fully intact. And this time, it was wide open. I stepped back, breath caught in my throat, ready to run, but then I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Slow. Heavy. Measured. I turned, and there he was. The other me. Hoodie stained. Eyes black. Face pale and hollow like a dying star. And he didn't speak. He didn't need to. I knew what he was there for. One of us had to go through. One of us had to stay. The door was waiting. And I no longer knew which side I was on. Crossing the threshold didn't feel like stepping into a room. It felt like falling through myself. Like the moment I stepped through that door, the door that had been sealed, erased, whispered about, forgotten, the air split and something inside me tore loose, not violently, but like an old thread finally snapping under its own weight. The floor on the other side was the same creaking wood as the hallway, but each step echoed wrong, not outward into the space, but inward, like the sound was folding into the walls themselves, like the room was listening and remembering every movement. The smell hit next. Damp. Mold. Burned hair. It clung to my skin like oil and thickened the air until I could feel it sliding down my throat with every breath. And then I saw it, not furniture, not walls, but mirrors. Endless mirrors. Every surface was reflective, warped, dirty, smeared with something I refused to identify. Each one showed a different version of me, smiling, sleeping, crying, screaming. Some turned to face me before I moved. One waved. And as I stared deeper into the mirror closest to the door, I saw myself, the me I remembered being, standing on the other side, watching with wide, helpless eyes, banging silently against the glass. I turned, trying to leave, to go back, but the door was gone. Not closed, gone. Just seamless wall behind me, as if it had never existed. The mirrors flickered. The light inside the room dimmed to a deep red, not like a bulb burning out, but like something beneath the surface bleeding through. The air pulsed. And then I heard footsteps, not behind me, not from the hallway, but from the reflection. My double stepped forward. Same hoodie. Same eyes. But they were empty now. Hollow in a way that didn't suggest sadness or madness, just absence, like something had long since scraped his soul clean. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His expression said everything, pity. Not toward me, toward what I would become. He reached out and pressed his hand against the glass. Without thinking, I mirrored the motion. The moment our palms aligned, the mirror fractured with a soft crack, like ice beneath weight. Then another mirror cracked. Then another. And from behind each one, something began to crawl through, pale hands, hungry faces, eyeless versions of myself dragging their bodies forward, grinning with mouths that opened far too wide, filled with teeth shaped like my own but sharpened, stained, filed to points like something that had chewed through mirrors for centuries just to get out. They didn't attack. Not right away. They circled. Surrounded. And then, they knelt. All of them. Every version of me, kneeling before the last mirror, the only one that hadn't cracked. Inside it, I saw something else. A version of me that looked exactly the same, down to the smallest freckle, except it didn't move. It just stared back, calm, still, unblinking. Until it raised its hand and motioned me forward with a single curling finger. The air shifted. The floor began to pulse like a heartbeat. And the walls started to close in, slow and deliberate, mirrors bending and groaning like metal under pressure. My limbs wouldn't obey me anymore. My legs walked without instruction. My hands lowered to my sides. I couldn't stop. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. As I stepped toward that last mirror, I knew what was happening. I wasn't entering it. It was entering me. The moment my fingertips touched the glass, it wasn't cold. It was warm. Alive. And from somewhere far behind me, I heard a voice that I swear sounded like the landlord, soft, satisfied, final. One of you goes in. One of you comes out. The house stays fed. I woke up in my bed. That was the first thing I noticed, not where I was, not what time it was, but the fact that I was upright, eyes wide, chest heaving, drenched in sweat, staring at the ceiling like it had answers carved into the plaster. The morning light streamed through my window, soft, golden, warm, the kind of light that made you question whether the nightmare had even happened. My room looked the same. Same desk. Same carpet. Same scuffed paint on the corner of the wall I kept promising to fix. For a moment, just a moment, I allowed myself to believe it. That it had been a dream. That I was free. But then I stood up and caught a glimpse of the mirror across from my bed, and I froze. It looked normal at first, but there was a delay. Subtle. Less than a second. Just enough to feel like someone was watching me from behind it, trying to remember how I moved. I waved. My reflection didn't. Not right away. And when it finally did, it smiled. But I didn't. I told myself to leave. I packed a bag. I went to the front door, key in hand, heartbeat finally slowing to something human again. But the hallway wasn't right. It was too quiet. The wallpaper was fresh. The floorboards didn't creak. And there were no doors at all. Just a long, white corridor with smooth walls and a single black line running down the center, like a guide. I followed it because I didn't know what else to do. It ended at a mirror. Not a door. Just another mirror. And in that mirror, I saw the house behind me, dark, rotting, shifting like it was breathing. My reflection didn't move. It just stared. And then it spoke. Not with words I heard, but with thoughts that weren't mine. You left the door open. Someone had to stay. You stayed. I reached out, wanting to smash the glass, to break whatever thin barrier still separated me from something real. But my hand passed through. No sound. No resistance. Just cold. Wet. Pulling. I screamed, not out loud, but inside my skull, where every scream echoed back twice as loud. And when I pulled my hand out, it wasn't mine anymore. Longer fingers. Paler skin. My ring was gone. I don't know what I am now. I'm still here, in this room, walking the same halls, breathing the same air. But things are different. The mirrors are slower. My reflection blinks a second too late. People walk past me on the street, but no one looks me in the eye anymore. Last night, I watched a video someone uploaded of this house, old footage, maybe a vlog from a year ago. They showed the front door, the peeling siding, the address. But when they passed the second-floor hallway, they stopped. One of the comments said, "Did anyone else see the guy in the mirror? The one who wasn't moving?" And the thing is, I don't remember being filmed. I don't remember them coming here. But I do remember the mirror. And it remembers me. So if you're watching this, or reading this, or listening from wherever you are, ask yourself something. Have you ever walked past a mirror, and felt like it didn't quite follow you? Like it hesitated? If so, don't ignore it. Don't turn around. And if you've ever dreamed of a locked door you've never seen before, maybe you already opened it. Maybe you've already been inside. I wonder, which version of you came back?